And welcome back. I'm guessing some of you out there are looking at maybe switching up your hiring process or just curious about new ways to do things. And we saw Breezy HR popping up all over the place.
You're making some noise for sure.
Yeah, and we did a deep dive into all their materials. And honestly, it's pretty interesting stuff. It goes way beyond just like posting job openings.
Right.
This is about like managing your whole team and getting them to perform well.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're really trying to streamline that whole employee life cycle,
Yeah.
from attracting people to actually keeping them engaged and, making sure they're performing well.
Yeah. So let's break this down a little bit.
Yeah.
So first off, attracting and qualifying the right people.
Right.
We saw a lot about this, and one thing that really jumped out at us was this advertise and attract feature. They're saying you can get your job opening in front of millions of candidates
Right.
on all these different job boards, like with a single click. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. And these days, with companies really pushing for diverse teams that kind of reach is really important.
Right.
Studies show that companies with more diverse workforces actually perform better financially.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So it's not just about, being inclusive, it's also a smart business move.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, okay, you've got all those people seeing your job, but then you got to make your company stand out, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I've definitely been on some pretty janky company websites, and it makes you wonder what it's like to actually work there.
Totally. Yeah. You got to think of that career site as like your virtual storefront.
Okay.
If it's a mess or outdated or, just hard to use, people are going to bounce.
Yeah.
And Breezy HR, it looks like they give you the tools to build a really nice site that like reflects your company culture.
Right.
And that's important for making a good first impression.
Absolutely. Right. So let's say you've got people interested now. How do you actually manage all those applications? I mean, that can get really overwhelming, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's where I think the automation features in Breezy HR really come in.
Okay.
It's almost like having a virtual assistant to handle all that like tedious stuff.
Like what kind of stuff are we talking about?
Like pre-screening candidates, scheduling interviews, all the emails back and forth.
Yeah.
All this stuff can eat up so much time.
Oh, absolutely. So you're telling me I can finally get rid of those like late night sifting through resumes?
Yeah, potentially. But it's not just about making things easier for the HR team, right?
Right. Of course.
It's got to benefit the candidates too.
So how does it do that?
Well, by automating all those tasks, it frees up the HR people to actually focus on what matters. Like building relationships with the candidates, creating a positive hiring experience.
I see. Yeah. So it's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
I like that. All right. So let's say we've hired someone. What about like onboarding and performance management?
Yeah, so Breezy HR has a whole section. They call it Hire and Measure.
Okay.
Looks like they've got tools for offer letters, getting new hires set up in the system.
Right. The fun paperwork stuff.
Exactly. But then they take it a step further.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What's this measure part about?
Well, it seems like they're giving you ways to track employee performance, set goals, give feedback, all that.
Okay.
And a lot of companies are realizing that regular performance management is key to keeping employees engaged.
Right.
If you feel like your boss is invested in your growth, you're more likely to stick around.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Breezy HR is trying to make those conversations about performance more, more frequent and less awkward.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, they even have things like virtual high fives built into the platform.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. But it speaks to a larger trend. They want to make performance management less about, top-down criticism and more about feedback and recognition.
Yeah, I like that it sounds a lot more human, and it looks like they even have a mobile app. So you can give those virtual high fives from anywhere.
It definitely seems like they're trying to keep up with the way people work today, more flexible, more remote, always connected.
Yeah, for sure. But even with all this technology, you still need to have those, face-to-face conversations, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So how does Breezy HR actually help with that, the human side of performance management?
Yeah. Right.
What are we seeing here?
Well, one thing I noticed was they have these templates for one-on-one meetings.
Oh, yeah.
I've definitely had those performance reviews where it felt like my manager was just reading off a script.
Right.
So do these templates actually help, or do they just make things more impersonal?
That's a really good question. I think it depends on how they're used.
Okay, so how should they be used?
Well, they should provide like a framework for the conversation, but they shouldn't dictate the whole thing.
Right.
A good manager will use the template as a starting point, but then tailor it to the individual employee. Yeah, that makes sense. You need some structure, but you also need that flexibility to really connect with the person.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance.
So Breezy HR gives you the tools, but it's still up to the manager to use them effectively.
Right. Technology can facilitate, but it can't replace those human
Oh,
interactions.
yeah. Okay, and speaking of human interactions, I see they have a whole section on company culture and employee engagement.
Yeah.
That's something you hear a lot about these days, but what does it actually mean?
Right. It's a bit of a buzzword.
Yeah.
But I think company culture is really about the shared values, beliefs, behaviors that make up the work environment.
Okay.
And while you can't force culture through software,
Right.
you can use tools like breezy HR to kind of reinforce the culture you're trying to create.
So, for example, if one of your company values is open communication, Breezy HR could help with that by making it easy for employees to give and receive feedback.
Exactly. It's about providing the channels for communication and collaboration. And they also have features for things like employee recognition programs,
Oh, yeah.
which can be really powerful,
Yeah.
Remember those virtual high fives we talked about?
Yeah.
It might sound silly, but those little gestures can make a big difference.
So it's not just about salary and benefits. It's
Yeah,
about
yeah.
creating a workplace where people feel appreciated,
Exactly.
like they're part of something bigger.
And I think that's what's interesting about breezy HR. They're taking a holistic approach to the employee experience.
Yeah.
It's not just about hiring or performance management. It's about the entire employee journey.
That's pretty ambitious, but let's be real. No software is perfect.
Right.
There have to be some downsides.
Of course.
What are some of the things we should be thinking about?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is data privacy and security.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big one these days.
You're putting a lot of sensitive information into a system like this.
Right. Employee records, performance reviews, all that.
So you really want to make sure they're taking data security
Right.
seriously.
Absolutely. And beyond the security aspect, I'm also wondering about, could these systems become too impersonal?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to pick up the phone and talk to someone.
Right.
Can relying too much on software actually hinder those human connections?
That's a great point, and it's something to be mindful of. Technology should enhance human interaction, not replace it.
Right.
The best companies will use these tools to streamline things and free up time so they can focus on building relationships.
It's all about finding that balance.
Exactly.
So we've talked about a lot of potential benefits of using Breezy HR,
Right. Attracting talent, managing, performance, boosting engagement.
but we've also heard some cautionary notes.
Yeah, about data security and the importance of human connection.
What would you say is the biggest takeaway for someone considering a platform like this?
I think the key is to remember technology is a tool. It's not a magic solution.
Right.
It's about choosing the right tool for your needs and using it strategically.
In doing your research.
Absolutely. Ask tough questions. Make sure it aligns with your company's values.
It looks like Breezy HR has a lot of resources available to help with that decision.
Yeah, they have free trials, demos, webinars, case studies.
So they're trying to be transparent,
It seems that way.
which is a good sign, but ultimately the best way to know if it's right for you is to try it out.
Yeah, see how it works in practice.
No substitute for real-world experience.
Exactly.
So for anyone listening who's intrigued, go ahead and explore Breezy HR further. See if it's a good fit for you.
I agree, and I'd add one more thought as you're exploring these options. Remember that the human element should always be at the center of your decisions.
I love that it's not just about finding the fanciest software.
Right. It's about finding tools that help you create a workplace where people feel valued and supported.
Okay, that's a great point to end on. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We've looked at the features of breezy HR,
Uh,
the benefits, but also the importance of using technology thoughtfully.
and keeping the human element in mind.
Exactly.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with one final thought to ponder.
Okay.
We've talked about how Breezy HR can help companies attract and retain top talent. But what about the other side of the equation? What can you do to make yourself a more attractive candidate? In this job market, what can you do to stand out?
Oh, that's a great question.
It's not just about having the skills anymore, right?
No, it's really not.
Yeah.
It's also about those soft skills.
Okay.
Adaptability, willingness to learn all that.
Those are things that are hard to teach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in a world where technology is changing everything, those human skills are becoming even more valuable.
So it's about embracing what makes us human.
Right? Think about communication, collaboration, problem-solving, creativity. Those are the things that set us apart from machines.
I like that. And I think platforms like Breezy HR can actually help with that.
Oh, for sure.
If you're using these tools